Nothing like another Friday with college baseball, and we're doing college baseball done better right here on the Bettor Sports Network. I'm your host, along with my guy Johnny VTV. He is our Friday. You're basically my Friday night guy.
You make me smile. I appreciate it. I think we're each other's Friday night guys. Let's get into it. We got a lot of good games on the slate.
We do have a lot of really good games this weekend, specifically in the SEC. But I wanted to start outside of the SEC. Let's start with the Texas Tech Red Raiders, getting into it with the number 12 ranked West Virginia Mountaineers. This game kind of a toss-up, as I'm seeing here on the slate, minus 115 each way.
Well, that's what it was. Now it moved out to West Virginia minus 130. Everybody probably heard my rant about the Mountaineers. They are the best team in the Big 12. They should win it. I think Oklahoma State will probably challenge them down to the last bone. But, you know, West Virginia is looking a lot like 2022 Oklahoma Sooners. They're a team that started off a little slow. They're not very popular, but they have gotten hot at the right time. They've made a lot of splashes. And they're led by one of the best players in the country and a guy who has slingshotted his way into possibly a Golden Spikes Award, and that's J.J. Weatherholt, a guy who's going to be a top 10, possibly a top 5, maybe even top 3 pick in 2024. The guy just usurped Dylan Cruz for the country lead in batting average. He's got over 30 stolen bases. He is a 5-tool player. This kid is awesome, and they have enough pitching. They have enough pitching to kind of complement Weatherholt and the rest of like this offense. It's a little top heavy, but if they keep playing like this, I think we're going to really see West Virginia make a deep run because they are a team that is very talented and is just a very tough out right now.
Shout out to the Mountaineers of West Virginia. Let's go out to the ACC now. Let's talk a little bit about Georgia Tech and the Yellow Jackets. They're the underdogs tonight at number 10, the Duke Blue Devils. Dukie's not only a basketball team anymore, Johnny. They're a bit of a baseball team now too.
Yeah, I'm so sick of Duke. Like, let's be honest, Duke's not that good. Like, yeah, they've played a lot better as of late, but if you look at their schedule, you would say, oh, well, they beat 3 ACC opponents in a row, and they're all ranked. Whoop-de-doo. But they beat Louisville, who anybody's watched. Louisville's not good. Virginia, not good. They're taking down, on paper, good teams, but in reality, not good teams. Now, you can't help but play who's on your schedule, but the fact is Duke has come out of nowhere over the last month, and they've become a team that's not only respected, but possibly even finishing inside a top 8 as a national seed, as a host for regionals and super regionals, which to me is outrageous. That shouldn't be happening over a team like Campbell or maybe even a Miami. But nevertheless, tonight, Duke minus 150 with Alex Gow on the mound is a solid number. I don't have anything official in it. I would lean Duke. Georgia Tech is one of those teams that you catch them on the wrong day, they could hang a crooked number on you. But I would say overall Duke takes the series, possibility with a sweep, and I think that starts tonight. Minus 150 is a little short, in my opinion.
Let me let's have this conversation before we get to the next game, because I hear you talking about Duke, and you know, I'm looking at D1 baseball rankings right now in terms of where they are, and they are number 10. Which teams inside the top 15 would you identify as having realistic odds or a possibility to really run at a college baseball World Series championship
and win it all?
Yeah. Have a chance to get to Omaha and really win it all. I know you're big time on Wake Forest. I know, you know, we've heard you talk about Coastal Carolina, Campbell, all of that. But outside of those 3 teams, look at the top 15. Which teams inside the top 15 would you say realistically have a shot to go to Omaha and win it?
Wake, LSU, Arkansas, Stanford.
I thought you hated those teams out west. I thought you hated the Pac-12 teams.
I do, but I mean, you know, Stanford is still a threat. They play pretty well overall in postseason. Quinn Matthews has been out of his mind. I think maybe South Carolina, maybe Florida. Not sold on Vanderbilt that much anymore. I think Campbell has half a shot. It depends what they're pitching. And maybe Tennessee. I don't really think a lot of teams have a legitimate shot. Now you're going to get the teams like West Virginia and Coastal and, maybe Connecticut and Vanderbilt that could make something of a deep run. But I don't know if those teams have enough firepower to ultimately get it done. In a situation like that where a less talented team can make it to the finals, you have to either get incredibly lucky with your draw, like Ole Miss did. Ole Miss avoided all the big dogs. Like the bracket was split left and right. Ole Miss avoided the Oklahomas, the Tennessees, the Notre Dames, the Texas A&Ms. They avoided all those. The only real challenge in their region was Stanford.
No.
Their side of the bracket was Stanford. They didn't even play them. They beat Arkansas. Arkansas is a really good team, but I mean, Arkansas is not – they're not an imposing team. They just beat you to death with fundamentals and good pitching. They're not like one of these nuclear juggernauts. So, if that's going to be the case, you have to get really fortunate with a good draw, or your pitching is going to be outrageous.
I know you're not huge on Connecticut, and I get it. Like, they're a team that has made some runs into regionals and super regionals in the past 10, 15 years, and not a team that's gotten to the College World Series. But it seems sort of impressive with what they're able to do. You look at all these other teams inside like the top 15, top 20, like geographically, they're all like Southern or out West. And so it's pretty impressive that a Northeastern school can crack that top 10 and what Connecticut's been able to do and really making some inroads in there over the last couple of years of making it to a regional, getting to a super regional. And they were one win away from getting to the College World Series yet last year. And you look down and Maryland's at 19, Boston College is at 20. So there are some other, Northeastern schools, but nobody's really been able to have the consistent level of success that my UConn Huskies have been able to have. So I just wanted to I know they won the national championship in basketball, but I just wanted to kind of give them a little baseball love, because even though I don't know if I would consider them a legitimate shot and a contender to make it to Omaha and win a college baseball world championship, it's pretty impressive with what they've been able to do in being a Northeastern school and consistently being in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, UConn was a team that surprised a lot of people. They took it to Stanford. They had an opportunity to beat Stanford, but it's strange because in college baseball, a lot of times you only get one shot to capitalize. So, UConn had the bases loaded with nobody out, and they were only able to scratch off 2 runs in the first inning of last year against the Cardinal. And when you have that kind of situation against a team like Stanford, you have to put on 4 or 5 runs, and you have to capitalize on your opportunities. And we saw Miami get eliminated like that in the regional against Ole Miss because they couldn't capitalize. So, I like UConn. It's really difficult when you have a Northeast team, and they're just a different breed when it comes to Big East athletics. UConn's an interesting case that maybe if they get a good draw, they can win a couple games, they can win a regional. It's hard for me to sit there and say that they're that legit. They have a lot of guys that have put up big numbers. They did lose a lot of star power from last year, but it seems like they've kind of filled it in. The issue is, what do they do when they play the real big competition? They haven't played any of the big dogs this year. And, the fact is, it's hard to really judge them. And, the record does speak for itself. I'm sure UConn will be fine. They've run a great program up there, but I just don't know if I see them having enough to get it done. They had a really disgusting pitching trio starting rotation last year, and they lost every single one of those guys. So, depending on how their starting rotation looks in the postseason is going to tell us a lot if UConn has a chance to make a run or not.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with my Huskies. Just kind of wanted to go off on that UConn tangent there because I did look at the top 25, and I thought that kind of really stood out to me. Before we get back into the betting, I did want to just quickly tell you a little bit about some promotions going on. Talk to you a little bit about BetMGM. You can get $1,000 paid back in bonus bets if you don't win by using fantasyalarm.com/BetMGM. Again, $1,000 paid back in bonus bets if you don't win by using fantasyalarm.com/BetMGM. All right, Johnny, let's get back into the games here, and let's go with one of your favorite teams, team that's finally usurped the LSU Tigers for the number 1 seed number 1 ranking in the nation. The Wake Forest Demon Deacons, they're heavily favored at the Florida State Seminoles this week.
How long have I been talking about Wake Forest being the best team in college baseball?
Too long.
I think there's a lot of SEC truthers out there, which, listen, I will agree with you. I think the SEC is leaps and bounds above any other conference. I think there's only a small true number of teams outside the SEC that can run with the Southeastern Conference. Wake Forest is one of those teams, by the way. And, I've been talking about them. For this particular game, I mean, we're not going to bet it straight up. I would put it in a parlay, maybe like a Wake LSU, Brett Lauder, Paul Skeens, little ace parlay. How you doing? Big favorites here. I mean, it's probably going to be like minus 150. That's what I got it at. So I think that's ultimately worth it. I'm a big Brett Lauder guy. I'm a big Wake Forest guy. There's not much you can do with this outside of a parlay. I haven't really even seen any run lines or totals offered this weekend on any book. So it's a little difficult to get involved outside of a parlay. It wouldn't surprise me maybe to see Florida State win one game this series. I don't think it'd be tonight. I do want Wake Forest to lose a game in LSU sweep. I want Wake Forest out of the number one spot. I want LSU back in the number one spot. I want all the attention to be on them, and Wake Forest kind of like just fly under the radar a little bit. Because a lot of people still don't take them seriously and don't respect them. And they have 3 of the best 5 pitchers in the nation this year. So Wake Forest, they're going to be a really tough out. And I feel bad if you guys didn't listen to me and get any of their 15-1, 10-1 on the futures market as they're sitting at a measly 6.5-1. Pretty much no value in that.
Yeah, not anymore. And before we get to the gauntlet of the SEC, let's talk about a game out west there in the Pac-12. The Arizona Wildcats will be at the number 4 Stanford Cardinals this week. Anything you like on this side of things? Is it Stanford? Hey, Quinn Matthews, you just talked about him, just rolls through the Wildcats?
Yeah. First of all, we gotta correct your naming here. Despite popular opinion and what I really want, and out of frustration, I don't know why it's a Stanford Cardinal and not the Cardinals. There's probably a reason I could look it up, but it's very frustrating. Cardinal is one word. I found out the hard way last year.
Really?
So
it is Cardinal, huh?
How about that? I don't like it.
I thought that was a typo.
Yeah, I quite frankly don't get it. But in any case, Stanford, for whatever reason, is a very short home favorite to Arizona. And that's not Arizona State. It's the Wildcats. Quinn Matthews has been one of the best pitchers in the entire nation this year. This guy has definitely been the best lefty, that's for sure. He has 6 straight games of at least 10 strikeouts. This guy's gone at least 7 innings in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight starts. I mean, I would think he's probably going to be a first rounder this year. I'd be a little bit surprised if he's not, maybe because he's a senior and he's a little old. But nevertheless, I can't not back this guy at home. It's a short number, and Arizona's not even in the same ballpark as Stanford. I'm not a big Cardinal guy, but I think it's been pretty well known that when Quinn Matthews is pitching, that is when I back Stanford. Coming off a nice sweep last weekend, and I think they stay hot here. They're right inside the top 5. They look like they're going to host a super regional as well as a regional. So I think they get off to a hot start. And just so we're clear, Arizona's throwing Cam Walty, who's been pretty strong, to be honest. But there's just not much there to this Arizona team. They hit the ball pretty well. They put the ball in play. Maybe that's what they're going to try and do. But at the end of the day, I just think this team is not a match for Stanford with Quinn Matthews on the mound. And I'd also like to say that if we're going to fade Quinn and Stanford on a Friday, it's got to be a much bigger number than that even money. Arizona is not a team that I would even think makes the tournament this year. So this is a bad line. This could be a 2-unit play for us this evening with Stanford.
Very nice. Well, I've got the answer, and we can make it clear why it is the Cardinal and not Cardinals. The Stanford tree is the Stanford's band's mascot and the unofficial mascot of Stanford University. Stanford's team name is Cardinal, referring to the vivid red color, not the common songbird, as at several other schools. So it's because of the color is Cardinal, not the actual Cardinals, because they are, what did I say? The tree, the Stanford tree.
Something.
It's their unofficial mascot. So yeah, not the Cardinals. It's because of the color, the Cardinal. So
we get some name lessons here. We had the Coastal Carolinas Chanticleers. We have Stanford. I think we might have had a couple more. So yeah, we drop a little education here.
I would also like to know, and maybe I'll look this up. I know we don't talk about this team today, but you like to mention them just about every time we have a show because you're really high on them and you like their program. And they're the number 13 team in the nation this week. The Campbells. Why are they called the Camels? What about their university? Is it just because it sounds good? I might look that up at some point. But we'll go to the SEC now, and I'll let you talk about some of these fantastic matchups we have. I'll let you kind of get this worst one out of the way, probably Mississippi State. They're plus 300 on the road at LSU tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously LSU's gotten ballooned. It was minus 400, and now it's minus 500, which means enough money came in. People are laying 400 for LSU. It's Paul Skeens' day. Paul Skeens has been the best pitcher by far this year. He's logged one of the most impressive college baseball pitching outings or seasons in the history of the sport. So it's really only viable in a parlay, in my opinion. like I said, like a LSU Wake parlay would be something that I would be interested in. For Mississippi State, though, I do think they might take one game. Their pitching has been bad. Okay. That's the problem. But they have a lot of power in this offense. A guy by the name of Hunter Hines is just a complete pain in the ass. This guy's over 20 home runs this year. He's got a lot of power. So for me to see Skeens give up maybe somewhere between 4 and 6 runs, while it's unlikely, it wouldn't shock me. This Mississippi State team can score. I don't think LSU will lose, at least tonight. I think they might draw a loss somewhere, throughout the weekend, just because how shady that Tigers pitching is. But it's definitely one to watch. But for tonight, we're gonna rock with LSU in a parlay because it's hard not to get a piece of Paul Skeens when he's on the bump.
That's not a bad thing, obviously, as you've talked about. All right, let's go to the next one. Number 17, the Kentucky Wildcats are underdogs at Lindsey Nelson Stadium against the number 23 ranked Tennessee Volunteers. Vols are nasty at home. I think they're like 30-4 at home or 30-2 at home at this point. They're only 2-11 on the road, but they're real good when they get that home cooking brewing. Talk to me about this matchup because Kentucky, they're hot. They just came off a sweep of South Carolina not too long ago.
Yeah, Kentucky was out of the top 25 before last weekend, and they put it on South Carolina. Impressive series win, no doubt about it, but they leapfrog all the way into the 17th overall ranking on D1 baseball. I think it's a little bit over dramatic. I mean, this Kentucky team is more than less or not faded over the second half of the year. They had a big series win, but they've been a team that hasn't really played, the way they have been earlier in the year. Now, at home, I think Tennessee needs this series more. We know the splits, and, at Lindsey Nelson, I think Tennessee should take the series, maybe even the sweep. Minus 160 is a good number. Andrew Lindsey, since taking over as the Friday guy, they've won, knock wood, 3 straight openers with him. So minus 160 is a fair number. And more than that, Tennessee has an outside chance to host a regional, possibly even a super regional, which means they would be inside the top 8. Probably not that far, but definitely hosting a regional is possible. So if they manage to take the series and possibly even sweep Kentucky, which is what they need, because next week they're at South Carolina and they're 2-11 on the road, which I don't understand. Now, if they could muster the strength to play well on the road and they take back-to-back series against ranked opponents, then we're going to have a case here for the Vols. But in terms of tonight, I think I got to go with Tennessee. Andrew Lindsey's got to just keep doing his thing.
Sticking with Andrew Lindsay, that's not a bad idea. He wasn't fantastic last week, but he's just been good enough to win, and Tony likes to throw out the good bullpen guys behind him. We'll see if Chase Burns gets back into the mix this week because he didn't play last week, didn't pitch at all. And I was talking to my Vol guy yesterday, and he's saying basically they didn't get him in a spot where they wanted to get him. Shoulder a little bit tight. Hopefully he's been able to recover a little bit from that. So see what happens there. Let's go to a team we just mentioned there in that last conversation with the South Carolina Gamecocks, looking to rebound after the sweep at the hands of the Wildcats. They'll be on the road in a very difficult matchup against number 3 Arkansas.
Arkansas was on my card at -135. Now, obviously getting market agreement here. It's Hagen Smith against Eli Jones. Will Sanders, the usual ace for South Carolina, who has not been pitching well that much this year. He didn't even make the flight with an injury this weekend. It's going to be freshman Eli Jones, who actually has been pretty solid. But how long he goes, I don't know. Hagen Smith is the clear pitching advantage here. South Carolina's offense has not been good. They have not been getting back to the Ethan Petrie bombs. You know, Ethan Petrie's been in kind of a slump. The rest of this offense has been very quiet. So I think Arkansas, who's not really a flashy team, they don't have a lot of star power. They have a couple guys in their lineup, Tavian Josenberger, Jared Wagner. TBD on if they're playing or not. I just think they do the little things well, and they find ways to win. And the pitching is definitely in favor of Arkansas tonight. So I think taking them here is one that I'm going to be looking at. And, you know, for your South Carolina, this is really becoming crunch time because they've been a top 5, top 3 seed for a while, and now they're number 6. And should they lose this series, they're maybe outside the top 10 next week. And then if they lose to Tennessee, they were looking at a super regional host. Now they're just going to be hosting a region, and then, you know, they're going to be on the road somewhere else.
Yeah, it's crunch time. You're right. For South Carolina, they have to really shut up or put up or shut up at this point. But speaking of that, get all pro access to Fantasy Alarm and unlock all their features, including all fantasy football and betting content, plus the award-winning DFS playbook covering 10 different sports. For a limited time, get all this for 50% off your first 6 months with promo code ALARM50. Again, that's ALARM50 at fantasyalarm.com. Get started with a free trial today. That's promo code ALARM50, ALARM50 at fantasyalarm.com. All right, Johnny, I got before we wrap this puppy up, I've got the origin story sort of the Campbell camel. You ready for this one? It's not as intriguing, and there's a whole big article, and I was trying to skim through it to see if I could find a better origin story, but one urban legend suggests the nickname derived from people mishearing or mispronouncing Campbell. So not super exciting, but that's funny, just a short answer. Funny. Yeah, Campbell. I mean it's hard to say together. I screwed it up like 4 times already.
People drop the P, be like, oh yeah I want to watch Campbell.
I watch the Camel.
Or drop the B, be like, oh I want to watch Campbell. And then, you know, if you get somebody that doesn't really enunciate that well, you could be like, oh, you want to watch Camel?
Yeah,
Camel.
Exactly.
Camel.
So I can see that too, but that's just sort of an urban legend. There's a whole big article on it, and I didn't have time to get all the way through it. But let's talk about our final game, and it is a doozy here in the SEC. The Vanderbilt Commodores are taking on the number 7 Florida Gators out in the swamp. Which way you going? Which way you leaning on this one? I know you're not huge and you don't believe in Tim Corbin's squad, big time, and they're going to be on the road. What are you thinking about this matchup between these top 7 teams?
So Vanderbilt had to scratch their typical Friday night guy, lefty Carter Holton, unspecified as to why. Instead, they're going to be starting. They're going to be starting bullpen pitcher Patrick Riley. Nope, not the same Pat Riley, who's been pretty solid. He's a solid pitcher. He's a guy that hopefully I think they're going to be looking for 4, maybe 5 innings. And they're going against Brandon Sproat. Brandon Sproat has a lot of talent, but the guy is not consistent at all. Florida, no question, has the better offense. They play very well at home. But I think it's quite obvious that Vanderbilt is superior in the pitching. Now, the Gators have a couple solid relievers. They have a decent closer, Brandon Neely, who was a Sunday guy last year, actually. But, I want to go with the better pitching here. Now, even though Vanderbilt's offense, they haven't been great, I still think there's an avenue for them to win. It's probably a little bit risky. This was an even money play. And then I guess once Carter Holton got scratched, more money came in on the Gators. But, I like Florida, but I don't buy them. Their bullpen is bad, dude. Vanderbilt's got enough pitching to where if they can manage to keep it within a 4-run game by like the 6th inning, then I think we have a shot for Vanderbilt to pull up the upset. I think the Florida pitching is a big problem. And, something that I learned, and it's not really applicable for tonight, but Hurston Waldrep, the Saturday guy who has electric stuff, and he's among the league leaders in the nation in strikeouts. He's been struggling mightily the last couple of weeks, and I found out the reason for that. So 11 weeks in, the umpires noticed that Waldrep may have an illegal motion in his pitching delivery by having the glove and, the ball in front of his face, which I'm not really sure.
Mm-hmm.
So he's had to adapt and go over his head, which has caused, so that little thing causes a whole ripple effect of why he's probably not pitching well. You have to go through a whole new delivery. That's like a basketball player having to go through a whole different shooting style. So possibly, I think Florida could be in trouble this weekend. I think Vanderbilt is a team that is capable of getting it done. And as dominant as Florida is at home, they haven't really beaten anybody that good at home this year. This is going to be one of the best teams they would beat on the road. And, I think pitching is going to win this one.
That's really intriguing that he wasn't allowed to put his glove and his hand in front of his face.
Something like that, yeah. Something like that.
That's crazy. Like, what would have Andy Pettit have done? Remember Andy Pettit with those eyes? He would just peer at you over the glove. Like, man, that's wild. I hadn't heard that. But, yeah, that'll certainly throw you off if you're a pitcher and you have to do something completely different that you're not used to doing. It'll certainly throw you off big time, and that makes sense why he's not been as good as he's been early on in the season. But that's going to do it for our show here today. I do want to say thank you to Jared Moore behind the scenes doing all he does to help to get us on the airwaves here and put this podcast together and push it out and clip things and get us going and whatnot. So we appreciate you, Jared. And quick shout out, Johnny, to the moms on Mother's Day coming up on Sunday.
That's right.
Shout out to the moms,
to all the great mamas out there. We love
Mama
you.
Larnerd.
We couldn't do what we do without you. So shout out to hope all the mamas out there have a great Mother's Day from Bettor Sports Network.
And follow us all over social media at Bettor Network. That's BETTOR Network. For Johnny VTV, I'm Greg Larnerd. We'll see you next time on College Baseball Done Better.